everybody, what's happening? Welcome back to another episode of the Paranormies present the Ahnenerbe Hour. I am Johnny Monoxide. I am joined by absolutely no one this week because we're taking the week off. Since we just did our big Halloween live blowout, we started early in the morning with Culture Conf and Darwin Digest. We moved into some shit posting, and then we went and listened to the Bongo Bongo Book Club, and then a whole bunch of people jumped in, and then the Paranormies did our thing, and, well, if you listened, you know what happened. So I'm going to be playing you some creepypastas and some music, and you'll like it. You'll love it. Trust me. We'll be back next week with another great episode of the Ahnenerbe Hour with the Paranormies, with Hazzard McGree and Adam Haight. Grayfield Stray will be taking his leave of absence. We're going to miss the Brit Bong. But in the meantime, check this out.
I work at a recently built city parking garage and transit hub. Late at night, it's my job to lock everything up until the morning, and then I patrol around the dark building alone with just my radio linked to the local police department. It is a very simple procedure. It takes me maybe 10 minutes to lock everything up, and then 15-minute walkthroughs every hour. Pretty easy job. At about 3 o'clock in the morning, I was very tired from my 8-hour shift, and I still had 4 more hours to go. I dragged myself through the security center, which is just fancy talk for a room with some monitors and a chair, and I started going up the ramps. I was listening to my footsteps echo, and I realized it seemed a little bit quieter than usual. I could smell that typical putrid air in the city, with the fermenting feces in the trash can from all the homeless in the area using the bins. We actually had to lock down our public bathrooms to prevent damage, theft, vandalism, you name it. But most importantly, to keep people from going in there and overdosing in the middle of the night. I finally got to the top floor and summoned the elevator. I put my forehead against the door to feel the cold air rushing up through the elevator shaft as it reaches my door. It opened up with that satisfying ding. I stepped inside, went back down to the ground floor, and continued back to the office. Fling the door open, head inside, and was running for that cold office room and used my little magnet fob to unlock the door. The door usually gets hung up a little bit, so I kicked it open and slammed it shut after I got back inside. Made my way for the desk. The computers that run the cameras are ancient, to say the least. I don't even think they make them anymore. Not to mention that the internet that the cameras are connected to is so slow, they take forever to update. So I just sat there with my new favorite pastime, which is watching myself walk around with a tremendous amount of lag. I sat there watching myself drudge on through the stupidly hot weather. I laughed when I put my head up against the cold steel there just to cool down. The elevator arrived, the doors opened up, and the light from the elevator flooded the area around me. And that's when my blood went ice cold. There was a man standing there, not even 6 feet away from me, just staring. I got in the elevator, and he just started running for the stairs. My heart races as I watch each camera. He hits the floor just as I hit it in the elevator. The fourth, third floor. Almost seamlessly, he's keeping perfect time with the elevator. My ears are getting really hot now, and I feel all the blood rush to my head. I'm having a hard time breathing. Watch the elevator doors close, and he begins following me again, getting closer and closer every time he turns a corner. I watch as I fling open the door, and he catches it heading right behind me, my heart pounding in my eardrums. He's inside the building. I keep watching, knowing I should look away. I can't find him, and then I see why. I kick the door shut in his face, which means I search the room and eventually figure out it's just me in there. Just to be safe, I radioed for a few officers to come in, and they looked around and gave me a slap on the wrist for not paying attention, and they left. The rest of the night, I just stayed in that room. I watched each camera diligently, but I didn't see him again. Now every time I go to work, I just can't shake the feeling that someone's watching me.
Jim looked away from his computer. He had just about finished his work for the day. He almost forgot about the final report that was extremely important to his boss. If he didn't finish it tonight, he would be fired. Or at least that is what his employer let on. He was told not to come into the office today, and to finish his work in the comfort of his own home. To concentrate better, his boss told him. Jim had been on his computer since about 1 in the afternoon, and it was now 8 p.m. He only took breaks to eat and to check on his newborn son, whom was only about a month old. His wife and he had been married for about 3 years before they decided to try and have a child. They were joyful as their first baby was healthy and, they hoped, happy. Jim stretched in his chair and looked at his computer screen once again. He quickly saved his report, and then he wondered when his wife would return from grocery shopping. Jim sat back in his chair and looked at the ceiling. He closed his eyes and began to doze off. And before long, he was awoken by the sound of crying. Soft, faint crying. He looked around, wondering where the sound was coming from, and then he noticed the baby monitor on his desk. Well, Jim thought, time to check on little Steven again. Just as he started to stand up, he heard the sound of a door opening in the baby monitor. Jim stopped and listened. He then heard the sound of his wife singing a lullaby. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. And if that mockingbird won't sing, Mama's gonna buy you a diamond ring. Jim sat back down. He laid back in his chair again and started to doze off once more. The sound of his wife singing the lullaby wasn't just making the baby sleepy, but him too. This is a start to a wonderful family, Jim thought to himself. Just as he closed his eyes, he heard the front door creak open. Jim watched as his wife walked in with grocery bags in both hands. He looked back at the baby monitor, his wife's voice still singing the lullaby. He then stared back at his wife for a brief moment before he sprinted to the stairs and raced to his newborn's room. His wife dropped the groceries and ran after her husband. As Jim was running, he kept thinking, no, what is happening here? Jim bolted to the door and almost destroyed it as he threw it open. Jim gazed into the room and then he witnessed something he will never forget. No matter how hard he tried to.
I was on a business trip about a year ago, and I had to drive from Denver to LA. It was a long drive, and I was growing tired of the road, so I stopped at the Holiday Inn hotel that was nearby. I walked up to the desk and rung the bell. Just seconds later, a man came out from the back room. "Hello, sir. My name is John Shelby," the man said. "How can I assist you?" "I'm looking for a room," I replied. "Are there any available?" He searched in his computer to see if a room was available. To my luck, there was one more room left. He gave me a key and told me to have a nice night. I asked him to point me towards a vending machine, and he did just that. When I walked to the vending machine craving a bag of chips, I noticed a pool at the end of the hall. A lot of hotels have pools. There's nothing strange about that. What got me confused was the fact that the water was red. Blood red. I purchased my bag of chips and went back to the front desk where the man was still present. "What's up with that pool back there?" I asked him. "What do you mean, sir?" he asked. A confused look had grown upon his face. "The water is red," I said. "Why is it red?" He took off his glasses and took a deep breath. "Well, it's kind of a freaky story," he said. "Years ago, a woman was found brutally murdered in that pool and the water was contaminated with her blood." "Are you telling me that her blood is still in there?" No, of course not," he said. "The water was removed and the pool was closed down, but many people say they still see the pool filled with red water." He put his glasses back on. "Personally, I'd never seen it, but I think this hotel likes to play tricks with your mind." So this place is haunted then?" He shook his head yes. I was shocked, not really scared, but just surprised because I'd never had an experience like that before. I went up to my room and took a well-needed hot shower, and I lay in bed. I couldn't sleep for some reason. My mind was so curious and it had so many questions that needed answering. I got out of bed, put on a shirt, and I walked into the hallway. I walked down the hall and headed towards the pool. It was quiet out in the halls. I guess nobody else had trouble sleeping. I was laughing at myself when I realized I was in my underwear, so it was a good thing that nobody else was out in the halls at that time. I do believe that I saw a woman cross from one room to the other. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but I just figured it was another guest. When I reached the floor of the pool, I was able to see the blood-red water even from way down the hall. I passed the front desk and nobody was there. Then I passed the vending machine and I stopped directly in front of the door that would lead to the pool. I tried the door, but it was locked. I don't think I would have gone in there even if it wasn't. I looked through the large window that showed the blood-contaminated pool. It looked as if the pool had been closed for a long time. I looked behind me, down the hall to the elevator. I was imagining that scene from The Shining when the stream of blood came shooting out of the elevator. I had a feeling that I would see something similar to that, but I didn't. Instead, I saw a woman standing at the edge of the pool and looking as if she was about ready to jump in. She was completely nude, not a single piece of clothing on her body. When she snapped her head my way, I jumped back in fear and I walked back to my room as fast as I could, taking the stairs next to the vending machine instead of the elevator. Hours later, I woke up to my alarm going off. I took a shower, threw on some clothes, and I walked down to the first floor for breakfast. After breakfast, I was ready to check out and get back on the road. I decided to take one last look at the pool before I left. I walked slowly past the front desk, past the vending machine, into the pool. I was still pretty freaked out by what happened the night before as I looked through the window. I was surprised to see the pool was empty. There was no red water and no woman. I walked back to the front desk where a woman was working. "Is John Shelby available?" I asked. She gave me a confused look. "Excuse me?" she said. "John Shelby," I repeated. "He was working here last night." "John Shelby died back in 1982, she said. "He killed himself after murdering a woman right there in that pool." She laughed. "Is this a joke, sir?" "Yeah," I said, forcing out a laugh. "It was just a joke." I returned my key and I left the building. I got back on the road, never forgetting about what had happened that night in that hotel.
Some people consider 3 a.m. to be the spirit's time to communicate with us. Others think it's the devil's mark. Some even think that when you wake up at this time, someone is watching you. But if someone were watching you, how would they watch you if there were no windows or doors in the room you were in? There are many superstitions for what 3 a.m. could be. I'm going to tell you the real meaning of this worldwide time myth. While you sleep soundly, you dream. While you dream, you are unaware of your surroundings. Unaware of what could be lurking in the closet, under your bed, beside you in your own covers. Your eyes flutter open and you check the time on either your watch, cell phone, alarm clock, or simply whatever you have lying around that has the time displayed on it. But knowing the time doesn't really matter, right? You rub your eyes and blink a few times, adjusting to the darkness of your room. You hear the sounds of floorboards creaking, the sound of pitter-patter along the ground. I'm sure it's just a mouse, you think to yourself. Maybe it is just a mouse, or a large rat. A very large rat indeed to be making such loud footsteps. You dare not look over the edge of your bed, for you are paralyzed in your fear. You're just scaring yourself. Enough already with this foolishness, you tell yourself. But is it foolishness? Or is there a reason to be scared? Are there monsters under the bed, waiting to snatch your feet and pull you under the bed when you get up in the middle of the night to use the restroom or get a drink of water? You do not believe in monsters. Those were stories that your mother or father told you years ago as a child. The Boogeyman, Sandman, and other monster stories were just stories to give you a spook, right? Yeah, right. Monsters aren't real. You think and chuckle at your childish fears, but wait. What was that? That pitter of feet seemed to be getting closer. You squeeze your eyes tightly shut as you hear the long, loud screech of your door creaking open ever so slowly. Was that a giggle you just heard? No, of course not. Mice don't giggle. Neither do rats. You're being delusional. You open your eyes slowly and stare at your ceiling. There is movement under your covers, the covers that you stay under to provide you with warmth and comfort. It's moving toward you slowly, in a crooked fashion. It looks as if it's limping beneath the blankets. You are frozen in terror, afraid to move or else you might just give away your location. You feel something tugging at the loose clothes that you wear. Oh Jesus, what is that? You yank away the covers and throw them to the ground and gasp at what you see. The creature is lopsided, grotesque in a way that makes your stomach turn in knots. It wears torn fabric that looks like it is hundreds of years old. It tilts its head to the right and gives you a crooked smile. Its dark eyes without pupils stare at you, unblinking. You slowly begin to push yourself up into a sitting position, backing away from the creature. This doesn't seem to bother it, though. It simply limps closer and closer until it has reached your leg. It pulls itself onto you and begins to crawl, slowly. Oh, so slowly. It bears that crooked, toothy grin. Its gray skin hangs from its bony body. It smells horrid, a smell you've not come to face before, but you know this smell, even without having smelled it before. It's the smell of rot, but not like any rot. The stingy scent of rot, flesh and blood. What are you going to do, you think, and lick your lips, eyes wide, not removing them once from the creature? It's still inching its way up to your body, closer, closer and closer to your face, with each limping step. You take in a deep breath through your nose and then release a scream so loud you think you've popped your own eardrums. The creature suddenly jerks its head toward the door and lets out a murderous cry. It quickly limps to the edge of the bed and jumps, landing to the floor with a thump. It rushes out the door and disappears into the dark of the hallway. You see, 3 in the morning is when the little things come out to play. When the little things decide it's your lucky day. When the little things show themselves. But don't let this deceive you. The first time you see them is almost certainly the last. You're lucky if you can get away safely. I cannot tell you how to deal with the little things, for they are everywhere. In every home, every hole, nook, and cranny your house has. How many you have in your home is not a question answered easily. All I can tell you is that there are many. They study you, and they plan your demise. No wonder they reek of death.
reside within and see the stars as they fall behind you. The sun will never leave this city weak. The lost and damned reside within and see the stars as they fall behind you. Awake and crawling into my heart. The city sings a voice that grants me angel wings and a devil's heart. Oh, the sun will never leave this city weak. The lost and damned reside within and see the stars as they fall behind you.
I don't want to burst anyone's bubble here, so if you believe in haunted lost episode legends and enjoy living in that world, maybe this isn't for you. Don't get me wrong, I hate when people complain about lack of realism in entertainment, and I think all kids need to believe in Santa and the Tooth Fairy for as long as possible, but this is different. Back in the 80s I met this dude, Sid, who used to cut old VHS tapes and shit. It was more than a hobby for him, it was pretty much his entire life. His parents were a bit more wealthy than I'd been blessed with, so when we were teenagers and I was slaving away at a Scats, yes, Scats, fast food restaurant, he just hung out around the house cutting tapes. All day, all night. Of course, as you get older, things in your past become a bit clearer, and I think he might have been borderline autistic, or maybe he was a very high-functioning person with Asperger's. But of course I'm no expert, and I'm not saying that was the case. It's just the best and quickest way I can think of to explain his personality and this obsession with cutting tapes, cutting tapes, cutting tapes. It started when he saw Old Yeller as a little kid. For whatever reason, his parents let him watch that shit. If you're unfamiliar with it, it's the tale of a boy and his dog. I hope I don't have to announce the spoiler on such an old-ass movie, but in the end the boy has to shoot his own dog because it's rabid. Sid didn't appreciate this. His dad photographed and videotaped weddings, so he showed Sid how to operate some of the machines. and Sid cut out the ending, replacing it with an earlier, happier scene, as if Old Yeller just suddenly got better off screen. He watched the tape obsessively after that, even into his early teens when I'd first met him. He made me watch it once to show how he fixed it, and I could actually picture him as a little boy once he started applauding and cheering his own faux ending. I don't want to say I was a bad influence, but after I saw it, I asked if he could do that with other movies. My major interest was perhaps taking a film or two and cutting in some nude frames the actress hadn't really done. Don't worry though, I never had the guts to actually ask if he would. I just imagined how cool it would be. Often. Sid told me that, yes, he could fix any movie he wanted. In fact, he had done it with a few others. He had a copy of a Ghostbusters cartoon, and, I shit you not, every single ghost was completely removed. The story made no sense. There was no continuity, but he had accomplished it, and I was very impressed. I guess in the time of VHS, these things seemed more magical than they do nowadays. As time went by, I encouraged Sid to edit more movies, but with different purposes. Instead of whitewashing all the scary stuff like he'd wanted to do, I got him to see the light on how awesome he could make things. Somewhere out there, this chubby Star Wars nerd from our high school has all 3 original films flawlessly cut together, with edited in effects that would have made George Lucas himself cry out, "Enough meddling." We charged him like $20 for the only copy, because we were idiots. Anyway, this went on for a while before I lost most of my interest in it. It was more of a goof for me than it was for him. This is the point where I started working, started driving, started taking bases with local girls, while he just got more and more involved in cutting those tapes. I think his favorites were cartoons. When The Simpsons came around, he went apeshit with those. Now his edits weren't so much fixing things as just breaking them in interesting ways. Another thing that sticks out in my mind is when he recorded an episode of MASH and cut it with a gory old war flick. Halfway through his version, the camp gets bombed, soldiers invade, everyone dies. At the end, he specifically worked in freeze frames of each cast member's face, eyes closed. He had completely reversed his interests and embraced what had once terrified him, scary endings. He seemed to love things like long, drawn-out sequences in terrifying silence. He'd make me be quiet while they played, too. You may have heard about this mysterious fellow named Banksy, who goes around creating interesting graffiti and whatnot. At one point, he went into a music store and replaced some Paris Hilton CDs with his own fakes. Banksy had nothing on Sid. Every other week, he'd tell me about some store or a video rental place he'd snuck some of his tapes into. He swapped out the real ones for his versions, and then he'd start all over by cutting the ones he had stolen. At one point, when I hadn't heard from him in a long while, I stopped by his parents' house and found him in the garage. He'd set up his own little movie studio there, complete with a drawing board. He was actually animating entirely new content. All at once, I was blown away by his artistic skill I'd never seen before, and very concerned about when this guy was going to come out of the dark and start acting normal, like me. He barely looked up from his drawings as we spoke. I asked him what any kid, now in his late teens, would ask. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" "Huh?" "Seriously, dude, this is some crazy shit." "It's work. I'm working. My work is just as important as anyone else's." "Are you even selling these anymore, or are you just sneaking them into places? How much is all of this costing your dad?" "I don't care." I looked at what he was so fervently illustrating. "Is that a headless body? Dancing?" "Yeah." "That's pretty dark, man." "I know. That's the point." "I don't get it." "Those tapes. I thought they were wrong, but over time I figured out the truth." "Which is?" "The scary stuff is right. The happy endings are the lie." He just kept drawing as I stood there. The silence was disturbing, and in that moment I could smell the BO coming off of him. It wasn't just sweat either. It was a mingling of that, and a foul ass, and piss-soaked cloth. I hate to say it, but I gave up on him right then. It's that moment when you look at someone you thought you knew, and all that you can think is, holy shit, I never realized they were this far gone. It wasn't until I was in my 30s that Sid crossed my mind again. I was pursuing the internet, just aimlessly wandering the web, when I came across a series of urban legends about strange VHS tapes, recut movies, and lost episodes. Some of these I recognized. I'd watched them with Sid, or I'd actually seen him in the middle of working on them. Every disturbing scene, every unbelievable anecdote, I believed it because I had been there. Others, SpongeBob cartoons, episodes of iCarly, or whatever. Those shows came long after I've made my break with Sid, but the style was all too familiar. Even the ones that didn't sound like his work seemed like they could have been broken copies, or attempts at mimicking his work. He was still doing it. My God, it boggled my mind. I called up Sid's old number, not entirely sure I'd still find him there. It rang for minutes on end, and I knew that the search was hopeless. Even if he still lived with his parents, it wasn't likely they'd all still be at the same house by now. Still, I made it a point to drive out to his old place, to see if he was still in that garage, cutting tapes, or manipulating them via computer, or whatever he would be up to. When I passed by the house, the unkempt lawn was overgrown with huge, waist-high weeds. The dilapidated facade of the building, with its peeling paint on the shutters, missing roof tiles, and muck-filled gutters, told me no one had lived here for a long time. I saw a note on the door, but couldn't read it from the road. Maybe it was something I could use to locate Sid and see if he'd ever gotten the help I now realized I should have given him. Pulling into the driveway, my headlights illuminated the garage door. It was windowless and vandalized with the gangster tags of some traveling band of assholes. The note on the door, as one might expect, spoke of a certain bank now owning the property. It noted that trespassing was heavily discouraged, and that at a certain point someone would be out to make sure the house was winterized. Whatever the hell that is. As I walked back to the car, defeated, something was nagging at me. I knew that Sid's parents kept a spare key under a false rock by the back stairs, basically by virtue of Sid locking us both out on several occasions. When I found that key, a sense of cold, gnawing dread swirled in my stomach. Who would move out and leave everything in place like this? The key was the most obvious thing, but flower pots and lawn decorations were still there. Sid's old, rusted-out Huffy bike was leaning against the house, and had created thick, rusty streaks along the aluminum siding. I don't even know what I expected to find, but using the key, I entered the house. The smell was overwhelming. Not a putrid smell, nothing rotting or decaying. Just the smell of... I don't know if this would make any sense to you, but the smell of electricity. Like burning dust on a light bulb, or a heater giving off a particular warmed metal odor. That was the least of my concerns, however, as I saw everything just as I had left it. Everything Sid's family owned was frozen in time. The dining room table we'd all sat on many occasions was dust-covered and supported an emaciated dead rat which had all but turned to dust. The television, that bulky, oversized television set we'd all sat around to watch Sid's tapes and laud his creativity. It sat where it had always been, silently displaying a violent bombardment of black and white static. As I moved through the rooms, the sense of panic and discomfort within me only grew. Every fiber of my being was shouting, "Run! Run, you fucking idiot!" Still, I pressed on into Sid's bedroom. It was now empty and in disrepair. His prized action figures and blank videotapes, hundreds of videotapes, stale and water-damaged. I almost wanted to call out, to shout, "Sid!" and wait for him to appear as if nothing was out of the ordinary. I went into his parents' bedroom. There, lying in bed, were two motionless bodies. Gaunt, gray, half-turned to dust, just like the rat in the dining room. I could scarcely believe what I was seeing with my own eyes. Not only were two dead bodies slowly dissipating within the confines of this once idyllic suburban household, but nobody had even checked on them. Nobody had discovered this until now. My mind raced. My heart raced. The only things that wouldn't move were my feet, which remained glued to the spot. Sid, I thought, must have done this. There was no way the two of them would just lie down one night and simultaneously die of natural causes. Sid had said he didn't care about his parents, and... when was the last time I had seen them? God, I hadn't seen them for days, maybe weeks before the last time I talked to Sid. When I finally left the room, I took out my cell phone and began dialing 911. However, as soon as I lifted it to my head, an ear-splitting shriek of interference nearly caused me to fling it across the room. I rushed to the kitchen phone, squealing static. I tried the living room phone just to be thorough. Static. It wasn't until I put the receiver back down that I heard it. Music. Faint, barely audible music that I hadn't noticed before. It seemed to be some repeating melody, happy and light. Some flutes, maybe a whole horn section. I followed the peppy tune to the in-house door to the garage. Pressing my ear to the door's dirty surface, I determined that the music was indeed coming from just beyond. "Sid?" I called out, barely managing to forward the name with cold, bloodless lips. "Sid, are you in there? Are you all right?" I tried the door only to find it somehow locked from the other side. It was no matter, since one wild kick nearly knocked the rotting wood off of its hinges. "Sid!" I shouted as the dust slowly cleared. Through the haze, I could only see the light of a television screen. Vibrant colors. Blue, green, yellow. Soon, I could make out a cartoon playing on the screen. Then, the silver wires running from the set itself to some dark mass. Then, the dark mass took shape as my eyes adjusted to the odd lighting. It was Sid, or rather, his body. Not dead nearly as long as his parents, seated in an old office chair. The wires from the television set led directly to his body, eventually disappearing into several old, crusted-over holes in his leathery flesh. Through a small worm-eaten opening in his ribs, I thought I could see more metal inside of him. I walked to Sid's side, holding my hand over my mouth for fear of vomiting. His face was twisted into a hideous, wide grin. His empty eye sockets almost seemed happy, hooded by a pleased brow line. "Hi there," I heard a jarring voice. The voice was upbeat, high-pitched. It sounded almost like Sid, but different, bubbly, cartoony. I turned to the screen. The green grass, the blue sky, the yellow flowers, and Sid, a perfect caricature of him. It strolled along the infinite loop of that utopian cartoon background. It waved to me. "Sid," I whispered. "Oh God, Sid." He, the cartoon version of him, turned his attention away from me and continued to merrily stroll across that unending cycle of the same backdrop. He passed a shrub, then passed it again and again. The same bluebird, chirping happily, flew through the sky in a figure eight. "Sid." I shook my head, unable to comprehend the scenario. I never should have let you leave reality. I thought about what Sid had done to his mom and dad. I thought about how the bank would come by soon, and this would all come to light. I watched Sid walk along for nearly a half hour. Then I unplugged the set.
There was a hunter in the woods who, after a long day of hunting, was in the middle of an immense forest. It was getting dark, and having lost his bearings, he decided to head in one direction until he was clear of the increasingly oppressive foliage. After what seemed like hours, he came across a cabin in a small clearing. Realizing how dark it had grown, he decided to see if he could stay there for the night. He approached and found the door ajar, but no one was inside. The hunter flopped down on the single bed, deciding to explain himself to the owner in the morning. As he looked around inside the cabin, he was surprised to see the walls adorned by several portraits, all painted in incredible detail. Without exception, they appeared to be staring down at him, their features twisted into looks of hatred and malice. Staring back, he grew increasingly uncomfortable, making a concentrated effort to ignore the many hateful faces.
He turned to face the wall, and exhausted, he fell into a restless sleep. The next morning, the hunter awoke. He turned, blinking in the unexpected sunlight. Looking up, he discovered that the cabin had no portraits, only windows.
Oh, here's one from the first episode. Here's our buddy Death.
I was in the back, folding pizza boxes like a good little corporate bitch. The counter girl came back with a delivery slip. She tells me the customer sounded weird on the phone, kind of like he was talking through a fan or through his hand, and then he was almost like gurgling. My DC experience instantly makes me think crackhead, although around here it is way more likely to be some benzo freak or painkiller addict. I'm automatically assuming some weird interaction is gonna occur. I look at his address and see it as kind of in bumblefuck. I'm a little mad because I don't want to drive that far, but fuck it. It's the weirdest ticket I've ever seen. Guy ordered a large pizza with anchovies, ground beef, ham, sausage, pepperoni, etc. Literally $15 worth of extras. I go ask the counter girl if it's right. She says she thinks so. She couldn't really make it out though, so she said she did her best. She's like 16, so I cut her some slack. Assume she was daydreaming, called the number back. The phone rings 5, 10, 20, 30 times. No answer. I hang up, call again. The phone goes right to, the number you have dialed does not have a voicemail box that has been set up yet. Goodbye. Okay then. The manager decides to just make the pizza as ordered and proceed from there. I deliver a pizza to a hilariously obese and blackout drunk couple who invited me in for drinks, but I don't drink or smoke when I work. I had hoped somebody else took the weird pizza. Surprise, nobody did. It's my turn. I begrudgingly take the pizza and get in my car. I enter the address into my phone. It's on a side street adjacent to a park locals call Open Space, which despite the name, is about 500 acres of straight woods. It's about 25 minutes away. Basically the edge of our range. I put on some dubstep, go ahead and judge me, and crank my turbo Subi, judge me more, out to this road. If you're not from a rural area, this can be hard to explain. Winter in the woods is scary. There is never a single sound, ever. Unless there's something larger than a cat walking around, it's you and dead silence. I finally get to the address. There are a few houses on the street, but they sit on probably 5 acres each, so they're spaced out a fair amount. Looking for number 1134, I pass a 1130, then a long stretch of nothing till a 1144. What the hell? I just want to get this over with and get the next delivery without getting stabbed by some pillhead over a fucking pizza. I call the number again. Ring, ring. It stops ringing. There's no sound, but instead kind of like a buzzing or a humming. It's hooked up to my car stereo and it's getting louder and louder until I just hang up because I don't want to ruin my speakers. Windows are fogging up because at this point I'm pulled over between the two houses. Right when I roll the windows down, I am overcome by this odor of decaying trash like driving through Newark, New Jersey. Fucking gross, so I put the car in first and I start pulling towards the next house. At the end of the driveway there's a stanchion with a light on top. I'm gonna pull into this house and knock and ask if maybe they gave the wrong number over the phone. Makes sense for a pillhead. I'm probably 100 feet away when I see someone step out of the darkness into the light at the bottom of the driveway. Good, it's the fucker that ordered. I was expecting this guy to be all over the fucking place, leaning over and being fucked up. Guy isn't that fucked. Stopped the car about 10 feet from him. He's wearing a black coat that looks 3 times too big for him, even though he's probably only got 5 inches on me. I don't look at him at first. While I get the pizza out of the car and get his ticket and change, I talk to him. Hey sir, sorry about the wait and the calls, this is pretty far out there. No response. Realize I should be watching him considering the signs. The smell is still pretty pungent, but I know it's not trash day. I get the pizza on the roof of my car. He is standing there under the light on the opposite side of my car, so I got out of my driver's seat and went to the driver rear to get the pizza. I put the pizza on the roof of the driver rear. The guy's probably 10 feet away from passenger rear. I finally pay enough attention to get a good look at him. Giant, tall, no shoes, ripped up jeans, stains everywhere. Big jacket is mentioned. I look at his face, sunken eyes. Can't even see them with the light. Getting real sketched out because this guy hasn't moved or said a word. Stop the process and just stare at the guy. He's just staring at me with those freaky fucking eyes. His head is sort of bobbing side to side, but not in any fluid sense at all. Kind of like a car door, like how it stops at halfway open, then you give it another shove and it stops it all the way open. I watch his head do this in no real pattern for probably 10 seconds. Starting to get really uneasy between the stench and the head thing and the eyes and the not fucking answering. I stand frozen and so does he. Without breaking eye contact, I take my phone out of my pocket and hold it level with the roof so I can look at the guy and my phone at the same time. I go to recent calls and call the number for the guy. The phone starts ringing, but I hear no phone anywhere. Then, out of the quiet of the woods, I hear, faintly, so faintly, a fucking cell phone ringing back in there maybe 50 or 100 yards away. This is me kicking myself for not getting my CC yet. This is me almost shitting myself. The guy's just standing there still doing the head thing, but I swear I see that fucker smile. I finally get the courage to speak. Can you please come get this? Also, I think you may have dropped your phone where you were hiding a body or whatever in the woods. I nervously laugh, still thinking maybe this guy dug too deep into the prescription bottle or found some PCP or some shit. I see his mouth open, head still bobbing, feet planted to the ground. He makes a sort of low, guttural, quick grunt, then a high grunt, then another low. They are sort of soft, kind of like someone clearing their throat. I've shut the rear passenger door at this point, and I'm ready to book it to the driver's seat if I got to. Just as I go to call that phone again, I hear words. The phone's not mine. The pause between the and phone's not was way too long. Phone's not literally sounded like one word. Mine came out an octave higher. The phone's not mine. My mind is DEFCON 5, like just full panic attack. My knees are weak. I'm literally about to peace out. I push the pizza to the far side of the roof away from me. Finally muster out, "Sir, you are freaking me the fuck out. I have a 45 and less than $20 on me. Please come take this so I can leave." When I say this, the head bobbing stops. His eyes are dark and burning a hole through my skull. He opens his mouth again. It was his. What? I say, stunned. It was his. The phone was his. The guy comes toward the car. Not a step, but like one huge muscle spasm that propels him forward. The phone was his, he repeats. I'm on the verge of tears at this point. Standing next to the open driver's side, pizza is on the roof passenger rear door. Once again, the guy jerk jumps closer to the car. The phone is not his anymore. I blubber wordless and then gathering man balls, I scream, "I'm gonna call the fucking cops and blow your drug addict head off if you don't get the fuck out of here." I see the fucker smile this creepy fucking smile, and without moving his mouth, I hear him say in a completely different voice, a voice I've never heard before, "Go away! Stop following me! I will call the police!" In one big jerky motion, the thing reaches forward, takes the pizza off the top of the car and places a couple round things that I later identify as quarters on the roof, surrounded by dark liquid that spreads over the roof. I don't even think, I just get in the car and peel out down the road, leaving the hot sleeve for the pizza, leaving the shit on the roof, don't even close the door all the way. I go down the road at about 80 for a quarter mile and then pull a U-turn because I don't want to get even more lost with the psycho here. I whip down the road past the place where he was. Nothing. I finally get to the end of the road. There's a stop sign to merge with the main road. Look right to make sure it's clear. Look left. This thing's face is 12 inches from my own when I turn. Tactically shit myself. peel down the road. I finally make it back to the pizza place. I'm shaking like bloody hell. I smoke a joint just to calm me down, which I never do when I'm working. I walk in the front door of the pizza place. Hey Anon, that guy at the open space house just called back. He said you forgot some food, but he only ordered the pizza, right? He said come back, I don't know. I start crying. I look at my phone, which has been thrown through the car with my driving. 14 fucking missed calls from that number. I'm literally in tears. All the voicemails are empty except the last one. All I can hear is ragged breathing and those low grunts. Fucking bawling my eyes out in front of this hot-ass counter girl, and I don't even give a fuck. I sit for 10 minutes and calm down. I remember the change on the roof. I go out to the car and turn on my flashlight. The roof of my car was covered in the most viscous, weird liquid, but it smells like blood, and I throw up immediately. In the panel gap between my trunk and the end of my rear window, I find the quarters. Covered in the same maple syrup, thick goop blood shit, and stuck to it are soft little chunks of what I can only imagine is tissue. I go to open my car and my blood turns to fucking ice. There was a single line of blood going from the front quarter panel to the driver's side door. The fucking thing tried to open my motherfucking door when it was next to me at the stop sign. I tactically cry and poop my pants more. I go back in and tell the counter girl to try and call the number again. She tries over and over and over, but the phone goes right to voicemail. The next morning, I give the number to my uncle, who is a police captain a few towns over. He says the number is from a burner phone, paid in cash, basically untraceable, and it appeared to be off now. I sleep with the lights on now.
Each Halloween, the fall air carries with it a scent of the paranormal, and seemingly otherwise rational men and women are often susceptible to retelling and even believing embellished ghost stories and horrifying urban legends. If every myth has its basis in reality, what is the reality behind these ghost stories that we love to tell, these terrifying legends that reach into our primitive psyches and take hold with such icy grip? Well, I have spent the last decades researching just that, and after much investigation, data gathering, and old-fashioned legwork, I can with confidence present to you the original accounts of the real-life events that gave birth to these modern Halloween stories. We begin with this real-life tale that has an origin stretching back to 1961. Springtime is especially beautiful in Madison County, Alabama, and with high school graduations drawing near, anticipation grew with the local teenagers, as it does with all American teens, for the upcoming high school prom. Billy White was the starting quarterback for the local high school Fighting Bulldogs football team. He was quite popular, as one might expect, and many of his female classmates would have loved to be asked by him to the prom. However, it was no surprise when Billy asked the very likable and attractive Joan Tilton, cheerleader and treasurer of the home ec club. Well, when the big prom night arrived, it was particularly special for Billy and Joan, as their classmates chose them king and queen of the prom. Following this special occasion, the couple decided to go for a drive, as they weren't quite ready for the night to end. Billy, wanting some privacy, pulled off the deserted country road and into the nearby woods, where he parked the car. And with Elvis crooning on the radio and the soft glow of the dashboard lights accentuating Joan's porcelain skin, the mood was set, and the young couple began making out. Before getting too far, an embarrassed Billy reluctantly admitted that he had to relieve his bladder, so he excused himself. "I'll be right back," he told Joan, as he exited the car, leaving her alone in the front passenger seat. Only moments later, Joan heard what she thought was a scuffling noise. Already feeling paranoid, she was upset by it, but soon dismissed it as merely the wind. But as she sat there, she could hear an unmistakable scraping sound. Joan could not dismiss it this time. The noises would not stop. And what was more, The sounds were coming from the roof of the car. Instinctively, she locked the doors. She wanted to call out for Billy, but terror paralyzed her throat. Feeling trapped, her eyes darted from window to windshield, not knowing what was out there in the dark. The noise was constant and unyielding. She couldn't take it anymore. Where was Billy? She had to do something. In tears, she forced herself to open the passenger door slowly. With her heart pounding and her breath panting, she rose up to turn to see what was on top of the car. Her face turned pale as a look of horror spread across. The scraping sound was coming from a pair of shoes belonging to a man hanging by his neck from the tree limb above. The corpse's black, lifeless face was smiling at her with a menacing death grimace. In horror, Joan ran through the woods, desperately trying to outrun the image of evil that was right behind her. In moments, she had broken into a clearing and stood frozen, staring at what was before her. First, there was momentary confusion, then a sudden, stark realization had set upon her. There Billy was, drinking Budweiser with hooded Klansmen by the light of a burning cross. My investigation was further able to confirm that Billy, indeed, did not get any that night. Our next story traces its origin to 1943. With Western Europe now pacified, the effects of the war seemed a distant thing to Mr. and Mrs. Decker of 263 Prince Canal in the picturesque city of Amsterdam. This seemingly happy middle-class couple were celebrating their wedding anniversary. Mr. Decker had decided to take his wife to a restaurant to mark the occasion. It would be just the two of them for a romantic evening. Mrs. Decker, excited by the prospect of the evening, asked Laura, the 16-year-old neighbor girl, if she would babysit their two young children. Laura was quite happy to do it. Before leaving, the Deckers gave Laura the telephone number for the restaurant at which they would be dining and instructed her to call if she had any questions. Laura was a natural with the children and enjoyed playing games with them until their bedtime. After ensuring they were asleep, Laura went downstairs to listen to her favorite radio program. Some short time after, Laura thought she heard a noise. So she turned down the radio and listened carefully. There it was again. She definitely heard something. Assuming one of the children had gotten out of bed, Laura made her way upstairs to find the children still fast asleep. Again, she hears a muffled noise. She's frightened, but she knows she is responsible for the children and she must act accordingly. She checks the bedrooms, the closets, and finds nothing. Still, the noises persist. She feels more and more frightened, wondering what she should do. Suddenly she hears a low moan. Oh. Panicked, she runs downstairs to the telephone where she calls the number of the restaurant. "Please, I need to speak to Mr. Decker," she tells the voice on the other end of the line. Waiting for Decker to pick up the phone seemed eternal as the moans became louder and louder. When finally he answers, she is beside herself. "Oh, Mr. Decker, I don't know what to do. There are noises in the house, but I don't know what's causing them. I'm so frightened, Mr. Decker." Mr. Decker responded, "Laura, listen to me carefully. The noises are coming from inside the attic. The Jew is in the attic. The Jew is in the attic." Additional research has shown that a team of exterminators were subsequently called in to remove the nuisance, all to Laura's great relief. Finally, this last tale is one of very recent origin. While out of town for a GOP committee meeting, Paul Ryan ran into Ted Cruz at the entrance of a hotel for which they both had made reservations. After the usual pleasantries, the two entered and Paul Ryan checked in. Afterward, Ted Cruz attempted to do the same. However, due to a mix-up, his reservation had been lost and there were no more available rooms. Understandably upset, Cruz began to berate the hotel clerk when Paul Ryan offered to share his room for the night. After all, the room had 2 beds and the 2 congressmen had known one another for some time. A grateful Ted Cruz agreed to this arrangement. Later that evening, Cruz left the tired Paul Ryan to sleep while he went out to meet friends in the city. When the bar that he and his friends were patronizing closed at 2 in the morning, he decided it was time for him to go back to his hotel room and get some sleep. Now, being a conscientious fellow, Cruz was very quiet when opening the hotel room door, not wanting to wake up Ryan, who he was sure was fast asleep. He even kept the lights off as he felt his way to his bed. During the long day and the alcohol, it didn't take much time for Ted Cruz to fall into a deep sleep. The next morning, he awoke to an aching head. He looked at the clock on his bedstand and realized he overslept. As he pulled himself up, he looked over to where Paul Ryan was sleeping. The bed was empty. He was gone. Cruz then looked down to see the morning's complimentary newspaper lying haphazardly on the floor. As he picked it up, he glanced at the front page article and immediately sat back down. What he read was nothing he would have ever expected. Written in bold-faced type was the following headline: "After rescinding Trump endorsement, Paul Ryan's favorability numbers plummet." Cruz sat there for a moment, disbelieving his own eyes. Shocking him back to reality, the buzz from his vibrating iPhone demanded his attention. With trepidation, he reached for the phone and read the ominous text message. "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the alt-right?" To all the Paranormies out there, have a spoopy Halloween.
Yet so far, the lightning strikes and then she glides. I float here slowly out of time. I wish that I could make you mine. Give it to me. Without you I can draw no breath. Beneath the waves I choke to death without this pleasure of the flesh. Silence, the restless man and the spiritual maiden. The lightning strikes and then she glides. I float here slowly out of time. I wish that I could make you mine. Give it to me. Without you I can draw no breath. Beneath the waves I choke to death without this pleasure of the flesh. Strikes and then she glides. I float here slowly out of time. I wish that I could
well, that will do it for the Paranormies present the Ahnenerbe Hour. I am Johnny Monoxide. Normally, we have Hazzard, McRee, and Adam Haight with me. This week, it's just me. We're just doing the clips. The guys are taking the week off. We'll be back next week with another amazing episode of the Paranormies present. You guys have a spoopy week. We're going to take you out with one last creepypasta. See you next week.
I don't really remember what happened before it all went dark. I think I was in the car. All I can remember was the loud noise, some screech of metal on metal, and then nothing. I woke up in this beeping place. I'm not sure why I am, because I can't seem to open my eyes. Silly, isn't it? I can definitely feel the blanket on top of me, and the beep, beep, beep beside me. But I can't open my eyes, or talk, or move. People come to poke at me every now and then. I always try to talk to them. Can someone tell me what happened to my eyes? I can't open them. I try to say, but my vocal cords don't seem to want to cooperate. So I guess I'll just wait. These people seem to know what they're doing. They poke in the same places every time. Sometimes with their fingers, sometimes with a sharp thing with no name. They don't really say much, these people. They just come, poke, sigh, and go. Someone opened my eye today and held a flashlight over it. It hurt. I couldn't tell them to stop, but just the movement of my eye felt amazing. Did you know if you don't open your eyes for a long time, they can stick to your eyelids? Yeah, I didn't. I do now. It didn't hurt though. It just felt good when it unstuck. Someone's been holding my hand and reading me stories. There's 7 chapters into Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets now. I'd tell them that I already read them, but I can't. They hold my hand sometimes and just sit with me, and so it's just me, them, and the beep, beep, beep. I think it's my mom. She was crying today. I wanted to make her happy and not sad, but something's definitely wrong with my arms because I couldn't hug her better. I'll have to tell her when I can that I wanted to help. So people came into the room while my mom was crying. Said that she would leave, that she shouldn't be here for this, but I didn't recognize a voice. I didn't want Mom to go. I was scared. She cried louder, said, "No, he's still there," and I wanted to shout, "Of course I am! Where would I have gone?" And then everyone left. Mom came back a little bit later. She was sniffling. She sat down and started crying a bit louder and louder until she was almost screaming. And then she hit me. Right in the face. I couldn't tell what I'd done wrong, but she hit me again and again and again. I couldn't say sorry or cry or stop or only sit there until the men came and took her away. 2 of the men stayed though, and they were mumbling, and I couldn't make out what they were saying until I caught the word coma. I wanted to scream, shake, jump up, slap him, something, but I couldn't. I couldn't say stop. I couldn't say please, I'm here, I can hear you, please don't do this, nothing. I can only sit there while they poke me with a sharp thing with no name that must be a needle. The beep, beep, beep turned into a beep, beep, and I felt myself getting tired. I wanted to ask what they were doing, but they thought it would help me to slow the beeping down. I couldn't stop them. I was screaming at the top of my lungs, but I wasn't moving. I don't want to die. I don't want to fade away. I need to hug my mom, tell her everything's okay, tell her I'm here and I'm fine. I don't think I'll get the chance now. Beep. Beep.